Shalom Aleichem Rabotai, this is Rabbi Kovacs. We are continuing in the Mishnah Yomi in the third parak of Orlah. Today is Baruch Hashem Hoshana Rabbah, a good kvittel for everyone, and these are the Mishnayot that are actually for Shmini Hagatzeret. Now in the previous year, we started the second parak, which again is a very chashuv parak in terms of kashrus, in terms of batel. We discussed how Isurim might combine to be mevatel one another. And in Mishnah Beis, we talked about where Orlah and Truma could be combined with Chulin, and both of these Isurim will mevatel one another if you have the right amount of Chulin. Now Mishnah Gimel is similar. Orlah ma'ala et hakilayim, vehakilayim et ha'orlah. So combined with Chulin, with regular, unsanctified, unproblematic produce, Orlah and Kilayim might be mevatel one another. Veha Orlah et Orlah, and Orlah can be mevatel other Orlah. We're going to see this is a bit of a point of contention with that last issue. Ketzad, how does this work? Seya Orlah, one Seya's worth of Orlah, shenafla metamei, it falls into 200 Seya of Chulin. Ve'achar kach, and afterwards, nafla Seya ve'od Orlah, falls in a little a Seya plus a tiny bit more of additional Orlah. So now what's going on is you have 200 Seya Chulin and 2.05 of Orlah. O Seya ve'od shel kilai hakerem, or it's a Seya and a tiny shtickle more of kilai hakerem. We saw in the first Mishnah in this parak that Orlah and kilai hakerem have the same shear of bittel of 201, and they both have malaya. They both are learned out from the malaya twice in the pasuk versus malaya once by truma, which is batel in 100 or 101. And the Mishnah concludes, Zohi, this case, sha Orlah ma'aleh et kilayim, kilayim et Orlah, the Orlah et Orlah. These are cases where they can combine to be mevatel one another. Now, this is not so pashut. Well, the way the vNeur explains this, he says, Lav metayim dafka. He says, it's not really 200. De'ilu metayim mamish. If you mamish had 200 seya of regular old chulin, and one seya of Orlah falls in, lo ba'atzerif. You wouldn't have to join it together with the other one. So according to the vNeur, one seya of Orlah kilai hakerem falls in 200. It's as if it's gone. It's batel, and we look at this thing as being 201 seya of chulin. We look at it as if the Orlah is not there at all. So he brings a case where really it falls into 199, and it's like Rabbi Yehuda over in Trumot, where it could be mevatel, where Truma could be mevatel in 100.1, just anything a little over 100. So then since you have 199 plus 1, and then 1 and a little shtickle more falls in, so they are mitzaref, and you need seiruf to be mevatel one another. According to the vNeur, it's still a kasha when it says Orlah and Orlah, that Orlah could be mevatel another Orlah, because that would be extremely difficult. So the Rambam learns this Mishnah quite differently, and it's actually a very chashuv limud regarding kashrus. The way the Rambam learns up this Mishnah is it's 200 mamish. It's exactly 200. So if one seya of Orlah falls in 200, it should be batel, right? That's true, but what if another seya of Orlah falls in? So now what you have in this mixture is 2 seya of Orlah and 200 of Chulin, so maybe it shouldn't be batel if we apply a concept called Hozer vNeur. It returns, it's Hozer, like Hozer b'tshuva, vNeur, and it's like it's alive again, it's active again. So that would mean that when the second seya of Isser falls into this mixture, it's as if it reawakens the first seya of Isser, and now what you have in here is 2 seya of Isser plus 200 of regular chulin, and it wouldn't be batel. So the Rambam is explaining the chiddush and the din of this Mishnah is we don't say Hozer v'neur. We don't say that the first Isser reawakens and combines with the second, but we only say this when there was a yediyah, when the person, the owner or the person watching it, the mashkiach, he realized what happened. So the timeline here is you had 200 seya heter, 1 seya of Isser falls in, somebody realizes what happens, oy vey, that fell in, but then he looks and he says, oh, Baruch Hashem, there's 200, so that 1 seya of Isser is batel, and the 200, Baruch Hashem, and then sometime later, Nebuch, another seya of Isser falls in, and he says, oy vey, but then he says, okay, it's all right, because the first seya was already batel, because I realized what happened, and that we had enough to be mevatel. So this is a very chashuv concept in kashrus, in Yerodeya, Hozer vNeur. There are discussions if and when it can be applied to actual kitchen lemaisa issues like basar v'cholov. It's a whole sugya over there, but lemaisa, if a single tiny drop of milk falls in the chicken soup, fine, that's not usser. But if 2 drops fall in, even if technically you'd have a 60 times both drops, people get a little worried about that because what are we doing with a lot of milk falling in the chicken soup? That stuff shouldn't be happening. But anyway, that's a whole sugya over there, and God willing, we'll get to when we discuss chulin in a few years. It's very exciting Torah, but for now, let's move on to Mishnah Dalid in Orlah in the second parak. Kol hamechometz, anything that makes chametz, meaning a leavening item, v'hametobel, or it's used as a spice, v'hamedameya, or it makes a prohibited mixture betruma, so it's truma that's not batel, like truma in 99 parts of chulin, uva Orlah of kilei karam, or in Orlah and kilayim, aser. That's forbidden. And the vNeur explains the chiddush here is even if it would be batel, but if it's causing chimutz, it's causing leavening, or it's causing a spice, even though it's a tiny amount, lemaisa, a tiny amount of spice in a big cholent could still be tasted, even though lemaisa it might be less than 100 or less than 200. So then what we're learning is it's not batel if you can taste it, and it's not batel if it causes chimutz, if it's causing the leavening. And there's a similar discussion by starters for cheese. Someone using a non-kosher starter for cheese, technically it's batel because it's less than 60th or it's less than a 200th. Well, it's not batel if it's the actual thing making the cheese. Mishnah continues, Ubeit Shammai Omrim, he has another chiddush, af metamei. He says, even if you have this tiny little amount of something, it's not a kibetza. We usually need a kibetza, an egg's volume of food that's tame to spread tuma. But he's saying even if this leavening agent, the sourdough, the sor shebeisa, or the spicing agent, even if it is less than a kibetza, if it's metame, it will spread that tuma to the larger food mixture. He says, food doesn't spread tuma unless it's a kibetza. So if you have this leavening agent, this cheesing agent, if it's tame, it doesn't metame the whole thing unless it's a kibetza. But if it has an isser on it, then it could technically spread that isser to the rest of the food. Shkoyach harbosai, good yentiv, and a good kvittel, and a Hoshana Rabbah Sameach.